Well, as we are speaking about change, we already have issues that are happening in Uganda, and that is the civil society activists have actually condemned the decision by Financial Intelligence Authority to freeze the accounts of 2 NGOs. That's Uganda's Network, UONET, for Women, UONET, and Uganda National NGO Forum. Their accounts were frozen, alleging that they are financing terror activities in the country. This is not the first time that NGOs have come into the spotlight and their accounts have been frozen, and some of them have been stopped from working in Uganda. We've also seen a situation where journalists came into the country and then they were taken back and said they did not have credibility to practice in the country. Now, all this and more, including the sanction of where the US is sanctioning Uganda for the brutality that happened. 7 police officers are being sanctioned and called upon by the US for being part of perpetrating the crime that has just happened. We have people in the government like Minister Kahinda Otafira, who seconds US sanctions, and this is where I ask myself, Kahinda, only could she? Anyways, now coming back to you, we have people who are, now these people have said it's not right, and these allegations do not even hold water. Now here's a question, and for me the question for you, Tariq, and the viewers is, why do you think this is happening? The freezing of the accounts and the fact that some journalists are being stopped, even when apparently they say they had the credible, they had papers to come and practice in Uganda and cover these elections, and they say that they have been stopped. And we know that the UN is actually just asking for permission to come and be part of the people who are going to monitor the elections that are ongoing, but some of them have actually been stopped from monitoring. What does this say for the free and fair election that we're expecting for our country, Uganda?
Gasina tuwana free and fair elections zetusubira mu Uganda. Okusogera njja tuddeyo ku nsonga ya kuba nti bakutte freeze account za NGOs ezimu. Emabega kao Bobi Wine Kyagulanyi yalina foundation ye yatambuza ne mukyala we. Twamulaba tambula country wide nga bagaba obuyambi, bagabira abavubuka obyami n'abaana abakyala we batyo nga bagaba obuyambi. Gavumenti yavaayo nebeera nti nno yateeka sanction ku NGOs ezimu ngeraga nti bana sente ze bayingiza no mu ggwanga esamanyikiddwa bulungi, balina activities ze bafundinga. Gwemenyo badde oyogera nga ngasawo NGO yajjanga egenda kugabira abantu sente ezirwatha emitwalo 22. Gavumenti nebeteeka question mark okuba nti sente ze bagenda ko bazijja egenda kuba nti yonoona abantu. Tukikana bulungi wanayo nti olwaliro esazo mu Uganda Latifa bw'oba olina omuntu wo ng'ali outside country ng'ali Bulaaya ali most mu nsi z'abazungu mu Bungereza wa, it is very hard omuntu okusindikira sente. Era sente ezimu ezo kati tebakyasindika sente ku masimu through mobile money wave naki baseeko obukwakkulizo bungi. Omuntu okuba nti akweza sente ayita mitenda mingi ejjamu ekuba nti sente zijja. Ekyo nakiddayo ku mbeera okuba nti nno President Museveni yavaayo juzi n'ayogera era nga allegations zibadde zivaayo ne zijja zoogera. Abantu bangi bazze bakyogera. Nga ne President Kwago mutaddeko nti NUP efuna funding okuva mu bantu ab'ebweru. The foreigners ababakinga NUP basindika sente. Era nga kituufu sente zaali zijjako nga nayo abaana b'NUP bava ne bagamba nti nno NUP ekanya ku accounting for sente ziva outside ezibayamba. So bwe kibanga essaawa zineeno Bobi Wine agenda amaanyi gakuze atambula anoonya akalulu ate nga bakolazeeko nti waliwo ebibiina, waliwo NGOs eziyisibwamu sente kuba zifandika campaign za Bobi Wine. Nga n'omugomize nennyini avuddeyo n'akyogerako nti abantu b'ebweru waliwo baforeigners ababacking ano okubaga bajjayo emirembe mu ggwanga nga basente basa mu NGOs okuba nti bazisuka ku Kyagulanyi. Tuwebunya lwaki kino kyazzeewo. Teri nsonga yonna lwaki kino bwakikoze, kiri ku nsonga eyo kati mu kusaaza ez'akalulu. Weebuze lwakisaze essaawa zino. Bw'otuna ebibiina bino ebiri bimaze ekimu kimaze emyaka 27 in existence nga kikola, kyakimaze emyaka 25. Why now? Lwaki essaawa zino bakwata ssente zaabyo? Ebbanga limaze nga bikola nga tebabikwatako. Lwaki kize mu kaseera kaneeno nga waliwo allegation eziraga nti Kyagulanyi afuna ssente okuva ebweru. Waliwo ssente ezingana nga zigenda kukola campaigns. Kubanga waliwo ne poster yafulumye recently Kyagulanyi ng'alaga nti waliwo kye bagenda okukola, they're going to do a fundraising mu America somewhere. Sente zigenda kuba zijja zibakole ki ziyamba akalulu. Ebyo kati bizzo okuba nti bistopping okubanga ekyo teri kirala. Tewali nsonga gye bagenda kwekwasa mbu ate simanya terrorism biki. No.
But here's is a problem because now the US sanctions on Uganda are going to make more sense because we're giving them more evidence about the fact that we're not welcoming exterior people to deal with our elections. Now, we remember that His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, when he was speaking during the launch of the UK Partnership and Uganda Partnership Business Forum in Munyonyo, when they were talking about it, Museveni said that we are not going to allow foreign people interfere in the issues of our country. And he bluntly said that we're not going to allow the white person interfere in the politics of our country. Is this his word coming to pass?
Abasajja bano bafuse ba Uganda, omusajja omu Kagame. Lumu yabali omujja ko interview n'agamba bazungu nti ye democracy basubira nti bo bagamba baranira eddembe ly'abantu. Nina bonga ba president ba Africa be basinga kwagala abantu baabwe. So n'abagamba who are you to interfere in our politics? Mubeere no nafe tubere waffe. Bwekibanga olwaleero ne Museveni atandise okukwata ekkuba eryo. Olabanga mutuufu kati bino byetwogeddeko biproving ekyo kye tubetwogerako kuba nti batanise okuba nti bayingira ne ssente ziva ebweru kuba nti ziyingira wano eno kimaze okulaga nti no yes kyekyo.
But that's one thing we're not realizing is that as a center that is coming in, whether it is fueling the campaign of Robert Chagulanyi, we're cutting aid in the country at the time when we need that aid a lot. We know that our country per se has been dependent on those aids a lot of times. And one of the things that these people do, especially organizations like ONET, what they do is they help women to try and develop themselves. And we're looking at a time where in this political situation, women need, or people and youth need to engage themselves in these activities.
Not even police. Tuva mu COVID. Abantu bali mu mbeera abantu bali mu mbeera nga abakyala obulimo obuweddewo, abakyala balina obulimo bali bakola. Ate kimanyi tukize tugaane era kino nkyana okukyuka nenga kyege mazima. Abasajja mu Uganda tusize obuvunaanyizibwa. Amaka gasinga yimizwawo bakyala. Abakyala bawerera abaana, abakyala bajanjaba abaana, abakyala bambaza abaana. Kati omukyala singa abali mu kimi onigiyongeyonge video kuba nti supporting abakyala. But beyimiriza obulamu obwo kuba nti bagenda mu maaso. Nobody says nothing you just stopinze.
Tarek, here's the other question. Are they really doing what they're supposed to do in Uganda? Are they following the streamlined guidelines of what they're supposed to do in Uganda? Or they have now decided to also play the political role in our country? These are questions that are being asked. Because as an NGO, when you come into the country, you rightly stipulate what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do it.
I don't recall the year very well. Government yaddamu neeyita NGOs zonna. Ne bakola refresh, ne bawandiika buto, ne baziveting.
Some of them were closed.
And some of them were closed.
Recently, yes.
Ne bagamba kati saazi ne zero ziteredde era zikola emyozo mu tufu bwazo olina okuba nti zikola. Lwaki obanga wasobola okuba nti ozikiza zino eziriwo tizikola mu tufu zimaka tizikola saazi nate ovaayo tanogamba nti ate zino nkyamu. Why at this moment? My question comes at why at this moment?
You know, in this political situation, different people do different things. And just like Museveni says, we are not going to allow the white man interfere in our politics. I kind of agree with him a little bit. But then here we have a situation where I will tell you for real, there are NGOs that on the forefront, they're fighting poverty, but in the background, they're involved in the activities of the political situation in our country. One, you're not a Ugandan citizen. You have no right to vote. You have no right to participate in our politics. So one thing that NGOs can do to protect themselves in this political situation is try their best to keep themselves away from politics. And it will help them a lot. But we've seen politicians who have used the same NGO platforms to go and talk to their voters. We've seen that happen. Now, NGOs need to understand that it's very tricky now. Not only NGO, journalists as well. Because we've seen that they have called for a new accreditation of journalists. And journalists have also come up to say, this is not right. You're giving us 7 days to try and make sure that, and even those who had applied for accreditation have to go back and reapply because apparently they are civic journalists. We have UJA as one of the media, group that is supposed to help. We have Media Council that is there to try and sieve the journalists that we have in the country. And truth is, every journalist needs to have a journalism accreditation form before they start practicing. But is that happening? And why did it take so long to happen that now is when they realize we need that accreditation and they're giving us only 7 days to get that accreditation? As a journalist, I'm angry at what they're doing because they had all this time to call for it. Just like recently, we had the Parliamentary House. that was also calling for journalists to register
yeah.
for those who don't have they don't have the documents to enter in parliament and cover stories. They called them and people came out, and of course they did that. Now coming back to this situation, similar situations, journalists and also the situation NGOs, because it's literally the same. What happens if the 7 days elapse and these journalists are not registered? Are we going to cut down the number of journalists who cover these events? Does it stop me from being a journalist?
Because Boba de very kene bakulaga nti atagenda kuba nti ayisemo atenda document atagenda kuba nti akkirizibwa wanti akavaringa stories ezigenda kubeera mu kalulu. Naye Latifa ensonga eyo nyatugize ne kubona abajina abavudde ebweru because nabo abagaye bennyini berenga ba registeringa ate nga balina documents eziri certificate okuba mu nsi zaabwe gye bava. Okigenda kuba kizibu nnyo omuntu avudde ebweru okuba nti najja okuba nakukola emirimu gyano mu Uganda okuba nti ayita mu process gy'omwagala okuba nti ayita mu 7 days. It's not easy. Era butunire nnyo olaba nti waliwo abazungu abajournalists ab'ebweru batono nnyo abali mu ggwanga tulaba nga bado Kyagulanyi eka yabalina abasinga baddizibwayo. So nalaba nga gavumenti egezaako kuba nti nno eremesa eddayo kwensonga kyebayogerako ntayagala kufunya bad picture bad image efuluma eggwanga lyaffe nti abo nabagala okuba nti baveeru bajja bakapcharinga ebigenda kubeera mu kalulu waneeno tebagala bifulume. So kati Latifa kitulekerako kino okulaga nti nno gavumenti eteekateeka kuba nti nno erina kavuyo kagenda okuteekawo mu biseera by'akalulu. Is it going to be tugenda mu lutalo tugenda mu ki lwaki tebagala media ebeere so involved ku ground tugenda kufuna fair and fair elections mu kibuzo kyebabuuziza kiri eri birabe n'ebiraganzi mu ensonga nga n'ebiriwo essaawa zineeno tugenda kubona fair and fair elections.
And the reason why journalists are angry, this so-called accreditation that they're calling upon for all journalists, recently over the weekend we had 2 journalists who were brutally beaten by police when they were covering the Robert Kyagulanyi issue. Yes. Cliff Omala was one of the people from NTV. David Tamale of Bukede TV has also been assaulted. Batese Sanga, journalist attached to BBS TV, all of them were actually hit. And this happened near Ntege Hill along Lira Kitgum Road. Now we know that there was something that was happening between a confrontation between NUP and police. And journalists were doing their job of covering what was ongoing. And we know from there, truth is we're not on ground. So we don't know what exactly happened. But all we know was 3 journalists who were taken to hospital to treat their wounds that apparently, allegedly, was put there by police. But how are we supposed to cover these elections?
Police yawadde ensonga nti okustopinga Kyagulanyi okuba nti yeyongera gy'adalina okulaga. They said that Robert Mao was also in that area. So they basawukiza Kyagulanyi kuba nti naye agenda. There are going to be a clash between those 2 camps. Naye tekikwesa leverage kuba nti okuba abajournalist obakuba obatocharinga. Era kya NGOs avuddeyo banaki abavudde ne balaga nti ne bagamba nti police ekitooga zirekerawo kuba nti nno zitugunja bannamawulire in the name of protecting Museveni. Bonga bo balaba nti nno balemesa bannamawulire kuba nti bakola emirimu balina okubanga bakajja gye tutaddewo batuggyeko ennimi bannamawulire soke twewandiisa tuddemu okubanga twewandiisa kuba tugenda okukavaringa stories zigenda okuba mu kalulu. Tulina okubanga tulina ebintu byetuyitamu okuba tulina okubanga tukizibu okubanga tukola tujjako ddembe lyaffe nga bannamawulire okuba nti tugenda kapcharinga ebigenda okubanga bikolebwa. So benigyo zigamba nti no mulekerawo okuba nti muviolatinga ddembe lya bannamawulire nene mu protecting the president. Kubanga president oba yavuddeyo n'ayogerako n'agamba nti si musanyufu eri IGP Ochola ne EC kati ngate bano IGP yavuddeyo sekitoga nzivire nziraga nti bannamawulire temina kubanga mukola emirimu ABCD nga temwaza kuyita mu mbeera bweti bawo tumalako ddembe lyaffe gala bawa protecting oli omukulu yayogeddeko.
When we come from where we've seen the kind of news that is being put on social media, we know that we need to sieve the journalists that are there. We saw that during the riots that happened, many people were hurt. Why? There was information that people were putting in different tabloids about what is happening, and something was fueled out of that. And it's true that Uganda needs to sieve the kind of journalists we have. We need to see who is the true journalist that will bring the information to the public with credibility, objectivity, and being on the right platform.
Who is supposed to do that?
For me, it's not about who is supposed to do that. You know where the problem comes in, Tariq? How many journalists are there in this country? Otwadde, how many days?
7 days.
7 days to finish going and applying for accreditation. Is that enough? Or are you just trying to cut down the number of journalists who are going to cover the 2024
mutima mulungi era okikola nga waliwo kye bakwekereza emabega bala kulemesa ku mwandi twetaaya mukaseera kakalo kavalinga ebigenda okubeera. Remember very well Latifa, abantu bangi buli kande kyagamba nti abalange omwana kulonda akaluluko beerawo kakuume. Tuli mu socho negenda okuba nti tuli mu kaseera ka COVID-19 era nga tebakiza kukuŋŋaana baga social distance era nga tugenda tuga mu kaseera okuba nti Latifa genda okulonda akaluluko you're supposed to go home. Kiriza obagaana bagenda teka embeera nga amagye police bagenda bagamba go home. So abantu bagenda kulemera wao bagenda kufitagala kukuuma kalulu bagenda kubeera clashes between abantu national forces. So wonobaga obugenda nti obi capturing abo namawulire you're going to be exposing ekigenda okubeera so kati kyeva ndi bageza okulaba nti bali mitinga exposure eyo egenda okubeerawo mu kaseera k'okulonda.
The relationship between the media and the security in the country is not good, and yet they are supposed to be the best of friends because we bring out the good in police, and in order for them to stand and look good it is our job, and in order for them to stand and look bad it is our job as well. And we've seen instances where the media, while covering certain incidents, their cameras are being taken away from them and their cards are being removed. But how are we supposed, again my question is, how is this supposed to be covered fair and truthfully without our rights being stepped on?
Latifa singa police yale kuli mulego ino kukola ngekola mazima nga teri party zange tena gwekolera ngikolera banna Uganda bale badde bamikono nyine banna mawulire kubanga yani badde bayambako manabule badde bajyambako kuba nti batunda police ekifani kyangu bakiteeka obulungi mu society. Naye okuba nti police erina beekolera nga ne muyinsi ntereeve erimu bakawukumi na biki ebirala tesobola kuba bamukwano nabane kubanga mmwe mubeera nga balugambo gye erimu libakali lugambo gye exposinga so tosobola kubeera bamukwano naye singa ebadde ekola bulungi ebino bikola amateeka ng'amateeka bwe gajereka okuba nti ekola kyani badde okinga buli bamukwano.
But Tariq, there's also a question of why journalists have to wait for this long to get accreditation. Omanyi, as a media house, you have the mandate and responsibility to register all your journalists for accreditation the moment they come and they are your employees. And we've not seen companies that have done that. They let people practice even without accreditation, although they ask for their papers, of course, from university as you're applying for a job. And as an independent journalist who is covering, say, for a tabloid, why haven't you gone to do your accreditation? These are questions that are being asked. And if they're calling upon journalists to show their accreditation, then we'll say, okay, but if you're calling upon them to re-register,
that is where my point is. Re-register. Togera kicho gedde ku no abula mudde mukase nabadde ne wenda ajirina mukasera kano kalachi damu so obuzibu buli awo waki mukasera ntuddemu.
Well, let's see how this drama goes and let's see how this goes, because I know that they need the journalists as much as we need them, because we need them for news and they need us to put that news on the platforms, because if there is no information then you're infringing people's rights to information, and journalists are the ones that are supposed to bring information to the people. Now